It's Dr.
Hey,
Kenya and Dr. Deanne, Tuesday at noon. How's it going
what's
out there?
up?
Yes, how's it going out there, everyone?
Yeah, who's
So
out there?
today we are going to talk about how to use AI responsibly in your customer and user research activities. So we will have a conversation next time about applying or utilizing AI responsibly in your actual products, services, and solutions. But today we're going to talk about how you can optimize your research team and research activities utilizing AI. So, Deanne, what's up?
Well, I think it's a great topic, and I know you and I have been jumping on board looking for all the tools we can to be more efficient and maybe take out some of those biases we
Mhm.
all tend to have with the tools. So I get excited about the topic anytime we're talking about AI, but definitely anytime we're talking about making our lives easier as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So
And that's the whole goal with AI is for us to be able to utilize AI and to augment the work that we do to be more effective in what we do and to not look at it as a threat or something that's going to take our jobs. I think there are still higher order thinking processes, analysis that we do as humans.
yes,
So that's where your value is.
yes, exactly. We take those, we kind of do the gut check on other activities,
That's right.
other activities we perform. And then somebody's got to have kind of those innovative solutions, based on that research, which I know some tools are getting a little better at that as well, but
Mhm.
it's still going to take that the experts who can take it and think of, okay, now what do we do, why does this
The
matter,
and so what?
and so what,
Exactly.
yes.
So I like the fact that you brought up the topic of bias, and I always try to educate my students, clients, colleagues that whether or not we try to avoid biases, they are just inherently a part of us being human beings, and I
Yes,
think systems where built creatively and correctly can reduce that bias. They may not
yes,
completely eliminate them, but they can reduce the bias in your data. So I think that's a really important point to note is if nothing else, look for opportunities. And you could even try things out where you do things without AI and then you apply the AI and look at where are the differences and where you might see your own biases
yes.
bubble to the top.
Yeah, and we have them, and I think I have a really good recent example. I
Mhm.
we've been doing a lot of interviews, IDIs, in-depth interviews with a client. We are leveraging a tool so that it can kind of back us up, give us some insights, and I so in doing that, I was kind of looking across the board, and we just are inherently biased. I had honed in on a couple of issues, and in my mind, were the
Mm.
most salient issues. And they were critical. But when I started looking at kind of the trending data based on the tools we use, it was like, wow, a big issue. What turned out to be the top issue was one I kind of knew was a problem, but it was
Mhm.
the tools that kind of took the blinders off,
Mm.
made me really see that full picture of what people were saying versus honing in, on something that
Mhm.
maybe confirmed, the confirmation bias. We all have. You hear
Mhm.
the things that you're like, that is exactly what I was thinking. So I've just had recent examples where it's eye opening. It uncovered things that I don't know that I would have, without using that to really crawl all the data across all the data sources,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So
Yeah, so you can almost I updated the ticker information. You can almost assert that utilizing AI provides you with a richer picture
mhm,
of the breadth of opportunities that exist. So you could see potentially a 10 to 50% increase in the opportunities that exist because you're not zeroed in on the things that from your own perspective you think are the most important. And
Right.
even if you try not to pull the data in that direction, it's really hard not to. So
It is.
I love that. I love that example. So when we think about reducing that bias, it's also the bias that exists when we look at groups or segments that are different than ourselves
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that are similar to ourselves. And so we assign or associate certain characteristics, behaviors, motivations to why they interact with your product or service. And so the AI can help to distill out some of that bias that exists that we as researchers may have.
Yes. And like sentiment analysis, that's in a lot of
Hmm.
tools as well. I mean, but
Hmm.
I think we're humans in general aren't always good at reading, the sentiments correctly.
Yeah.
And and the AI does a decent job. No one's saying anything's perfect, but absolutely. And we won't even get into the amount of time that is saved. So for everyone who has, done 51-hour sessions, am I getting
Mhm.
ahead of your ticker? Can you?
Go right ahead. No, jump on in. Jump on
But I
in.
did want to mention that. I mean, that's a huge selling point.
Yeah.
Huge selling point. I've been doing this a long time, and it's like you get done, you go back through the videos, and that's not to say don't go back through anything, just take whatever the
Hmm.
tool tells you. But it gives me more direction. So in the past, for clients, we'd write up summaries after each session. We'd have to go back through the video. It might be 1 hour, 2 hour video. You're stopping, starting, back, stopping, starting. It's kind of eliminated a lot of that for me, at least that manual part, because the tools are really, really, really good at least on the session by session level, definitely giving you a readout of what happened, what are next steps, what were some of the trends. Go a step further, get that in another tool where you can put all of the sessions or in the same
Yes.
tool, and now you've got something that's going to be much more reliable than you going through 25 2-hour sessions, when you have the tool to kind of guide you or at least put you in the right direction. So I'd say I saved per session, 60% time savings
Yeah.
from that perspective of actually having
Yeah.
to go through everything. So now I can just go to that piece in the video, like, okay,
Hmm.
it tells me where. Let me hear that again. So
Hmm. And I would agree that it's about a 50 to 60% savings
mhm,
in terms of that effort that happens after your engagement with customers and users. That activity is greatly accelerated. And to your point, the individual session data is really helpful in being able to be more effective around that synthesis.
yes,
So the time that was spent transcribing, replaying, pulling out video and audio snippets and that sort of thing is greatly accelerated.
yep.
And my question to you then would be, hey, if I'm a customer, does that mean I get a discount now that you're using AI to do that work?
Well, maybe you get more users in the testing. So I don't,
Yes.
it may be something like that, or it now allows me, and thinking of recent engagements, I've freed up more time to focus on, okay,
Hmm.
what are those solutions now?
Hmm.
Now
Ideation.
that 20, 40, 60 hours in,
Hmm.
some cases, we're sketching, we're on a whiteboard, we're, really
Hmm.
starting to dig into that, or we're doing additional research to triangulate results, make sure we're understanding, go to that next level. It's like, okay, we
Yes.
got the trend, what's that next level? So yeah, saves time on that, but that, to me, that just frees up time to work on some of the other things that you
Hmm.
end up in a crunch, because of project timelines. I've spent 2 weeks trying to transcribe and pull out
Right, right.
trends. I can now really hone in on, that either roadmap work or tactical right now work, solutioning around things.
It also changes the engagement around transcription services. And for those that utilize transcription as their competency or their
Hmm.
offering,
Hmm.
it now gets you to a place where you can reimagine what you deliver.
Yes.
I do think that that time that you get back, going back to my initial question about do I get a discount? No, I don't think it should be about a discount. It should be about, like you said, spending more time in the process of synthesis and coming up with ideas. It's also that money can then be redirected into the engagement with your researcher or your strategist
Yes.
who did that research to now engage the team around collaborative brainstorming, collaborative
Yeah.
ideation. Now you have a cost savings on the data gathering
Hmm.
that can now be used to put that effort and that focus on, okay, and so what are we building, what are we creating, what does that experience look like?
Yes. Yes. And that we, how many projects have you been on? I mean, even industry consulting, whatever it may be, where it's like, okay, and now what? And people
Hmm.
take the research results. That's kind of the end of the engagement based on the timing and the, scope and effort. Now what? And how many things just kind of get filed away? Like,
Yeah.
okay, here's some more that we're putting in our research bucket or, a persona bucket. When it's
Yeah.
like your end goal is to make an impactful change, to make more money, to get
Yes.
more users, to have a higher NPS, whatever it may be. Um, and you, that sometimes just gets squashed in the process because you get so wound up in the churn of that research
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
producing those transcripts and producing those reports and
Hmm.
analyzing the interview data, for instance. That's one of the more difficult ones, when you have large projects with lots of participants. So now you are free, you're free to
Hmm.
do something with the data.
And I think that's where organizations need to shift their mindset around the research and look at it less. It's less about the actual research activities, it's more around the value that's delivered and the consumption of that value.
Yes.
And to your point, I think we as researchers have to also sell that to our clients internally or externally, that
Right.
it's less about the time that we need to spend on doing all this heavy lifting, generating this heavy report. Those insights are there. What are we going to do with them
What do we do with them?
is becomes the value prop of conducting the research. And it almost lends to not calling it customer or user research anymore, but more the process of solutioning, where research is just the component
Right,
of that
right.
process of creating what is it and so what are we building kind of thing. Research is just a preliminary
Feeds
step.
into, yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep. To either generate requirements or make sure you're on the right track or whatever it
Create
may be.
concepts.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm. And also, as you think about the previous point around reducing bias in the data, when you think about the tool being used to build in efficiencies, part of that is also building in the reduction of bias in that data as well. So you get faster speed to result in terms
Mhm.
of what is that data, but then also that data is more than likely less biased
Yes.
in terms of what you put in your transcription. Sometimes I've found when it's a lot of data, you pull out or you tease out those things that you think are important, but using
Mhm.
AI, it'll pull out everything and kind of bucket them in terms of themes around what you find in that data. Whereas before, like you're saying, that bias reduction occurs as well in the process of transcription.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So yeah, so you feel more that your data and recommendations are a little more reliable, a little more
Mhm.
valid, versus falling into what we all do. I mean, we tend to, and we're on really tight deadlines now. We live in a highly agile, fast paced technology environment. So to me, anywhere you can cut out some of those tasks that eat up so much of our time will always give you more time to focus on the
That's
bigger.
always a good, yep, always a good thing.
Yeah.
It also speaks to those capabilities and skill sets of your researchers or the
Yes.
people who are responsible for research, because I think utilizing AI does not mean that you can replace the who creates the survey. So you can use AI to generate those surveys and that sort of thing, but there's still some amount of oversight that I believe a human has to have in that process,
Yes.
as well as the actual engagement. So when you
Yes.
think about some of the observational and in-depth interview work that we do, that you still need someone who's able to pivot based on what someone
In the
said.
moment. Yep.
Yeah, and if you observe something, there's a lot to be said about questioning or line of questioning about what you've observed or what you're observing that still warrants having that human in the loop in that research process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they can't do it all, but
Exactly.
it can lend a hand. It depends on the activity, right? I always hate to say, well, it depends, but it depends. So, even the tools now, again, trying not to get off sidetrack, but even the tools now are getting a little smarter with the unmoderated testing, where
Mm-hmm.
those chat agents, based on what, kind of scrubbing what the user's saying, what they're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually prompt with related questions. Now, that's going to be probably more of a project that's a usability test. It's,
Mm-hmm.
high fidelity are already out there maybe, but by the way, there are tools for that, but you're still going to need the human component, because
Mm-hmm.
that's who needs a structure, the test, know what tools to use, know how to take what it gives you, and what do you do with it.
Right.
I don't see the human. I know that's one of the biggest concerns with some of the AIs taking away jobs. I think we're pretty far from that for most positions. So
Mm-hmm.
for any UXers out there, we are by no means saying we don't need UXers. Let's go with the tools. You do need that human
Absolutely.
component, but
Absolutely.
so much we can do now without us having to be involved in every single session or every transcription and that sort of thing.
And the manual aspects of some of the work that we've done historically, that
Yes.
now changes. That means that, as a client or stakeholder engaging researchers for these activities, you can expect that results can come back sooner, or there's less biases in your results,
Yeah.
or you can expect that your engagement with your researchers, in-house or otherwise, will have more of an application of the findings
Hmm.
versus just reporting findings. And I think for those of us that do this type of work, it just means we have to sharpen our skills around facilitation, communication, ideation, those sorts of things,
Yeah.
because it's not just about delivering data.
Right. Right.
It's not just, and to the point of data, I think it's important to also note that when we think about the vast amount of data that exists, we now have an opportunity to use AI to pull together disparate or pieces of data coming from different sources
Yes.
and to synthesize that data. I should say collect that data. And that synthesis process occurs in conjunction with the human being. So I think that there is a need for someone to determine, okay, where and what are the data sources?
Right.
What is the ultimate assumption we're trying to explore or validate?
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned this one. Now, that's one thing I think AI is going to lend itself best to, is these large amounts of data that might not even be your data. By the way, you
Mhm.
could be learning about usage patterns, sentiments in a space, whatever it may be. But the data across sources, I think it's going to be really powerful because you tend to get certain kinds of data depending on the kind of activity you're doing. So an
Mhm.
interview versus a usability test versus a actual in-app metrics. So
Mhm.
how do you triangulate those, and what different story do they tell to give you that holistic picture that is very difficult for a human, to look at
Mhm.
all this raw data on their own. You can run some analyses. The tools, what Linda, I think we're going to see it become more and more powerful, uh,
Mhm.
using those tools and easier to do. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of data out there in the world, that can be leveraged for any given product.
Yeah, yeah. And when as you're saying all of that, I'm thinking about the fact that, these tools are scraping data from different sources, but now that means that there's an effort that needs to take place around anonymizing data or making sure that the
Yeah.
data that's aggregated makes sense to aggregate and
Yeah.
that it's not biased, that the AI itself is not biased in where it gets the data or how it triangulates that data. So that's where it's still necessary to do some sort of, reliability check.
Yes. Yes. And
Um,
interpret those across it.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And this is where we also get into the transparency of AI and that trustworthiness. And you have to be transparent in the tools that are being used by researchers.
Hmm.
There needs to be some level of transparency to inform users
The user.
about data sources and where is data being anonymized and how is that data secured. So there's a lot in the way of not only the application of these tools, but also considering how reliable are these tools, and are they something that you want to put put behind the work that you do, or are they going to make you look bad
Yes.
ultimately because they're questionable.
Yeah, good, very good point. That would be anything. I think you had said it in something I read. Garbage in, garbage out. If
Yes,
you have garbage data or bias, whatever that garbage may be, yeah, that's
that's
you
right.
have to know your data source. And again, I agree. That's where having that expert who's hopefully helped guide how the data is
Hmm.
collected, but can also look at how, if they didn't influence, look at how it was collected,
Hmm.
look at who it included, didn't include, whatever it may be, to make sure you account for those biases. And I like the privacy. I think from the user perspective, the people
Hmm.
out there, that's probably the top, yeah, concern, because people
Absolutely.
have a lot of concern around, you're
Absolutely.
collecting data on me, how are you using that data, that sort of thing.
Right. And how much of it is PII data that shouldn't be shared? And what are you doing with that
Yeah.
data? How are you storing it? So it then becomes, we're in a place where we can apply a lot of these tools, but we're still in that place where we have to be careful about
How we do
the
it.
stamp of approval that we put on anything that we're endorsing or utilizing, because there could still be some things that are in question
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
haven't been fully baked. And that's our brand and our work that's on the line as a result.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So when I think about AI tools and kind of the direction and where things are going, more and more, I think that the people executing the work have to be highly skilled and have expertise even more than so this is not a pass to say, oh, we're going to hire some entry level researchers and throw them at some really
Give
complex.
them some good tools.
Yeah, give them some good tools and they'll be able to get things done. Not necessarily. There's still a lot in the way of understanding the potential pitfalls,
Hmm.
understanding where the tool can be leveraged versus what you, as the person conducting the work, has to do. How do you facilitate those, next step conversations?
Yeah.
That's another one where you have to be skilled, because again, you're no longer just generating a report.
Right.
And
Yep.
that's where a lot of us fall flat is we lose our credibility and respect when all we do is generate reports.
Right. It becomes academic, an
Too
academic
academic.
exercise when you're doing that. So
Yeah.
I totally agree on that front. That's one of the main reasons. Like, don't pay. You're always going to need a human being in
Yeah.
there to interpret and to do something with this data. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have found that using the tools in projects, yeah, they've greatly accelerated that transcription, like we talked about earlier, that transcription
The
process and that kind of
manual.
thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, the manual part of things. But the project itself was still just as complex and required just as much attention. It's just that I could shift my focus to different things that were more effective in me being able to leverage my higher order thinking and my systems design capability
Right.
because I'm not like drowning in the data.
Yes. Yeah. And,
Mhm.
and that's recently happened where we were able to quickly shift the
Yes.
solutioning, got extra time, got, in the solutioning aspect so that, yeah, now we might have two, three options,
Yeah.
and we can rinse and repeat, right? We go do some more sessions based on that. And it's
Mhm.
just accelerating. It's just
Mhm.
accelerating so
And
many.
and I like the fact that you said instead of saying, "Can I save money?" put that investment towards additional interviews. ex- Provide a project schedule that is a bit shorter, but
Mhm.
more time, the greater percentage of your time after data collection can be spent,
Now
kind of
what?
with the team and focusing on that. And now what? What are we building? What does it look like? What is the experience? So now you have more time to spend on those sorts of things,
Yes.
which is awesome.
Yep. Definitely awesome.
Yeah. So talk about the tool that when you think about tools, what is the primary AI tool that you're using in your work?
Well, right now, thinking about the interviews and pulling out
Hmm.
those trends, the Firefly AI, Fireflies AI,
Hmm.
that because it just gives me it does a light sentiment analysis, but it it puts everything out there. It gives me action items based on what it's
Hmm.
hearing. It gives me a full transcript. It it kind of pulls out key points where
Hmm.
they occur in the video, so
Hmm.
I'm really leveraging that. And that's where I said, I know I gained 60%
Hmm.
time savings using it. But even like for ideation, you think about uh, other tools like Chat GPT. You
Hmm.
can use those. Again, you need the human because what you put in there it's going to impact what you get out of there. But
Right.
those kind of tools, very, very, very useful. They also can give me a quick swipe of other research that's out there.
Hmm.
For
Hmm. Good
instance,
point.
talking about AI tools, it can pull all kinds of stats and recommendations just based on putting the right prompt in there. So
Hmm.
those are the kind of things, but we've seen it in Canva, pull together a workflow presentation or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's being leveraged everywhere now to not just for UX. That's not just the UX perspective, but for a lot of people,
Well, as a
but we're
workflow,
talking about,
yeah.
yeah, we're talking about the UXers. So they're just so many places now
Yeah.
you can do
Yeah.
it. Predictive analysis, there are tools out there uh, for that now you've
Mhm.
got the tools that you can run unmoderated testing
Mhm.
using those, and it even has what is like a virtual moderator that's
Mhm.
that's
Crazy.
scraping what they're either typing or saying
Mhm.
and prompting, like if you and I were there, with a question. Is it the same? No, it's not going to be probably as
Right, it's not a
detailed
catch-all,
as us with
one-size-fits-all
something,
solution.
but now you can run those on
Yeah.
moderated tests and not just kind of have people clicking on stuff and rating stuff. It can be
Right.
dialogue. Across the world. with hundreds of people. you know,
Right,
so,
right.
yeah,
There was something that you were saying about tooling, and I just lost my point, but it had to do with the fact that we've also got to understand, when we think about the tooling that we're using, we've got to understand as the user, um, where we have to be careful about endorsing. Like, say, for example, when I think about, not endorsing. So in some of the tools, when I'm looking at my transcript, I'm able to look within the tool and see how much time did I spend talking during the session.
yes,
So I am now able to do something to then reflect on my own capability as a researcher, or what was the tone of my questioning.
question.
So now these are tools that are also not only delivering value in terms of the transcription or the content that's created, but also the details that are provided, or the metrics around the actual dynamic within the conversation.
Yes,
And so that gives me, or it's a reminder as the person doing the work, like, hey, you better stop talking so much. Or
yeah,
when you explain the question, don't go off onto such a tangent, because this is not about you. It's about the person that you're
about the
interviewing
person.
or engaging.
That's a really good one, Kenya. Because I've seen, yeah, I've seen those metrics in there, and I know that now and then I do. It's a check on me. It's like, wow,
Mhm.
Deanne, shut up. You know,
Mhm.
maybe
Mhm.
maybe shut up right here,
You're
or
talking too much,
don't
Ken.
talk too much
Exactly.
here.
That's what I say to
Um,
myself.
yes, so it really is a good tool. They're
Yeah.
great tools for that as well.
And if you've ever seen the spectrum of all the different adjectives around sentiment,
Hmm.
it's interesting because culturally, we as individuals may have a context around a subset of that whole list.
Yes.
But this is where AI, when we go back to the point around reducing some of that bias, this is where AI is able to find or identify a sentiment that might be outside of what we were thinking,
Hmm.
because it's something that wasn't familiar to us,
Right.
or something that, or an emotion that's not in the spectrum of what we experience or think we experience. And now AI is helping us be more, or less biased in the results that we deliver.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
So it looks like we don't
Mhm.
have any questions or comments. Deanne, did you have any final thoughts? I want to say before I hand it over to you that I definitely think this is a trend moving forward. I think we have to use things with caution,
Yeah.
and go into it knowing that things, we can't just kind of set it and forget it.
Right.
We've got to be aware of what we're working with, and that it is our brand and our name that stands, in front of whatever it is we're using. What final thoughts do you have about this?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that comment. I guess another thought when we were talking through this and some of the other discussions we've had is, we're as UXers, we and design, whether it's designers, product managers, researchers, we're already talking about helping our products with AI. And we got to jump on board with understanding that in a journey, like we talked about before, in that journey map, where potentially does data exist, or can we go get it to help the user in our products with AI?
Mhm.
But as doing that, I think it's really important that we're adopting AI, that
Yeah.
we're understanding what it can do, what it can't do, where it might lend itself, where it could in the future. You have to be, I think it helps to be an active user of it. And,
Mhm.
and so, anyway, that was a thought in this conversation, I had, was just we need to use the stuff, we need to understand it. One, for our jobs,
Mhm.
efficiencies, reducing the biases, all the things we've talked about here today. But then also just to be familiar users with, or familiar with the power and what's out there.
Mhm.
Because we need to be thinking about it for the products we're designing as well, wherever we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for this week's conversation. If you have any ideas that you want to share in terms of other topics that you'd like to hear from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next week.
Awesome. Bye.